Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Ice Hawks back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right when Carlson comes, Quenneville scores!
Here's a chance for Barrett. Fighting scores! Off the face-off! Up in Zeminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it. Shoots one. Bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski. Another jam on the shot. Turning and firing. They go! Score! Monsters score! Now they catch each other. They both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado.
And San Jose, California.
San Jose? Wait a second. Doesn't that say Arizona behind you, Sean?
I don't know what you're talking about, CC. I am here in San Jose for Barracuda camp. You cannot tell me otherwise.
Nope. Okay. All right. Well, welcome to episode number 10. That's the last time I can use all my fingers if you're watching the video. For Sunday, February 7th, 2021. And if you were hoping for a podcast featuring hay baling techniques, howdy, we're not going to be much help. This is the American Hockey League podcast. This is, well, a American Hockey League podcast. My name is CC Hockley.
And I'm Sean O'Brien.
And we thank you, as always, for tuning in with us.
If you're new to hearing CC and I talk about hockey, we're going to preview teams in the upcoming AHL season for you. We both watch a lot of AHL games, and we're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's a 20-minute primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms, go check that out so you'll be better able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it isn't that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes. You'll live.
Yes, and let's talk about our last preview of teams with a schedule currently, and that would be the San Jose Barracuda and the Tucson Roadrunners. Yeah, those are the last two we can cover at the time being because there's still 5 Canadian division teams that have yet to release their schedule, and they got to get that provincial stuff worked out up there in Canada. So once they get a schedule released, we'll talk about them. But until then...
Yeah, this is a give and take relationship, Canada. It always has been. You gave us Celine Dion, we took Justin Bieber. You give us a schedule, we'll give you previews.
And you give us Rush, and then we'll also give you previews. But I digress. Until then, we're going to burn it to the wick, and tell me about the Barracuda. Yeah.
All right. Give me a stats capsule here, Cece.
Yes, sir. All right. San Jose Barracuda head coach Roy Sommer in his 6th season with the Barracuda. And there's an asterisk next to that because he has been the coach of the San Jose Sharks AHL affiliate since 1998. We're going all the way back to the Kentucky Thoroughblades, the Cleveland Barons, the Worcester Sharks, and now the San Jose Barracuda. Good golly, that's a lot of affiliates. But Roy Sommer, officially in his 6th season with the Barracuda. Regular season record for San Jose in 1920 was not good. 21, 27, 5, and 2. That was good, quote unquote, for 7th out of 7 teams in the Pacific Division last year. The season ending was a mercy killing for the Barracuda, as it were. So their affiliation for 2021, the San Jose Sharks, and they still kind of have an unofficial affiliation with the Allen Americans. It was official a couple seasons ago, but yeah, the Allen Americans is the ECHL. They still trade players back and forth every now and again. Game scheduled for this year on the higher side of things, 40. Their opponents going to be Bakersfield with 10, Henderson with 8, Ontario with 4, San Diego with 6, Texas with 6, and Tucson with 6. I paused there for a second because I wasn't sure if I compensated for Stockton bowing out of the Pacific Division and, having to reshuffle those games around amongst the other Pacific Division teams. So there you have it. San Jose Barracuda. That's your stats capsule. And Sean, take it away. Talk about the forwards core. And oh my God, are there a lot of forwards for San Jose?
I'm assuming somewhere in the coach's office is a pillow with "It Takes a Village" artfully stitched on it. The Barracuda have 19 forwards on their roster, and about half are 21 or younger. That's less than AHL forward group and more a fraternity pledge class. They had so many forwards, the county fire marshal had to come in and throw Manny Wiederer out.
Bye.
But let's talk about the forwards that are there, or we're going to cover as many as we reasonably can here.
Right.
We're going to try and get all the ones that I think are going to make a pretty good impact in San Jose for the CUDA this year. Start with Joachim Blickfield. He continues to be a player I like, despite his skating. His game has come a long way, and he now has a lot of dimensions to it. He can drive to the net. He can rip pucks from distance, or he can circle back and find passing lanes to high danger areas. His defensive game is there, but I don't think he'll ever be called a 200-foot player. Antti Suomila has become a jack of all trades, but doesn't really wow you with anything in particular. He's got a good work ethic. He's a solid penalty killer. Doesn't have a flashy skill set, but he does a lot of little details we like attacking the middle on the rush or making clean passes under pressure to keep the cycle going. He's not a consistent play driver, but he can be a good middle six to top six contributor at this point in his career. Max Latunov, I believe, is currently with the Sharks on the taxi squad, but he seemed to finally take a big step forward last season. He's always had great puck skills and instincts, but never seemed to put it all together and get results. His skating is still a work in progress, and while he's, like I said, he's currently up with the Sharks, I think he's going to get quite a few games with the Barracuda this year. I think one of the themes you'll hear throughout our preview is the San Jose AHL and NHL teams seem pretty content to, when they're in the same place at the same time, trade some horses back and forth from the taxi squad to the minor system. So I don't think Latunov is going to spend the entire season in the NHL. Jaden Habakawaks, as I said in our off-signing recaps, he's someone I can squint at and see overlaps with Sam Anasa's game. He's got great hands, has good skating, but he lacks the top speed to turn the corner on AHL defenders like he used to do in juniors. And while size isn't a limiting factor in hockey today, Habakawaks is listed at 5'8" and 161 pounds. That combined with that lack of, top end speed, I think is going to limit him a little bit, but he's still a solid contributor for that team. Joseph Garifa doesn't have top end speed, but his edge work is quite good. The rest of his game doesn't wow me, and I think he struggles with the speed and physicality of playing against grown-ass men, as a lot of his production in junior last season was related to have Marco Rossi as a line mate. It was really amazing watching his junior tape, how many open nets that he just banged pucks into because Rossi set him up, or he, just handed the puck to Rossi and let him go do Marco Rossi things. Alexander True is someone whose compete level I really like. His puck skills and tight are impressive for the big man, but his skating keeps him from being more effective. I do like him, but the team has a lot of net front power forward types on the roster already, and it's hard to see him leapfrogging any of them on the depth chart. Leon Bergman, his film I liked a lot from last season. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy whose game is not very subtle. It's pretty much two steps. Get puck, drive to net. He's a relentless forechecker, and he has the puck skills and physical frame to pull off just dropping a shoulder and charging forward. He's someone I think who can drive play at the AHL level, but he needs to sometimes lose the tunnel vision he has, just get puck, drive to net, and doesn't make the best use of teammates on the rush. Tristan Robbins is someone that CUDA fans will come to know quickly. He's someone who's going to get you out of your seat during games. He can do it all, but his calling card is offense. He has all the offensive tools in his toolkit you'd want. Puck skills, check. Playmaking vision, check. Wicked shot, check, check, and check. He doesn't just have a nasty release, but he knows how to use deception and head fakes to keep defenders and goalies on their toes. He has skating that's good enough, and like I said, he does it all. He'll block shots. He'll kill penalties. He'll break up dangerous passes with his stick using his hockey IQ. He's a guy you're going to come to know and love. Zach Gallant has had a lot of shine fade from him since being a third-round draft pick by the Red Wings in 2017. He wasn't signed by the Red Wings, and the Sharks picked him up for free. Well, they pay him, but they didn't have to trade any assets. I don't think a lot of his offense transfers to the AHL from juniors, but he's a solid defensive specialist and a penalty killer. And while those are unsexy skills, so to speak, that does have a lot of value, and I think he's going to find himself, as a third or fourth line center, but killing a lot of penalties. Ozzy Wiesblatt is another young guy that CUDA fans will learn to love very quickly. He's going to turn a few defenders into gifts for sure this season, and his puck skills are just magical. He's a great skater, and despite being on the smaller side, isn't afraid of contact, to say the least. He's going to be a force on this team. There's also a great piece on the Weisblatt family from TSN that I highly encourage people to seek out and go watch. Jeffrey Veal is an old school forward. He's not particularly big or strong, but he's just a guy who goes straight to the net and causes traffic and gets rebounds. His downside is that he just cannot stop taking terrible penalties. He just can't. Repeatedly would throw away power plays because he had to retaliate, or hooks the guy who beat him because his skating is not good. This hurt extra bad last season because the CUDA had one of the worst penalty kill units in the league. He has some value because of his net front ability, but he throws a lot away with it with penalties. And I don't seem to understand how the CUDA keep bringing him back when they have a lot of power forwards that bring the assets and the value that he does with his skills that don't do the penalty box trips. Brandon Coe feels a lot like a late bloomer, and while he's OHL bound should they play an OHL season, he's got a good set of puck skills and uses his frame well. He's a good skater too, which for his size is rare. I don't know how he handles the speed of the AHL right away, but I think he's someone to keep an eye on that could push for consistent middle six time. Dylan Hamiluk last season was certainly a regression candidate, as he didn't find the near point per game pace in Kelowna that he did in Seattle. He also apparently had mono during the season, which probably explains some of that regression. Regardless, he has puck skills and shooting talent, but his skating is an area of weakness. I don't think he's ready for the AHL at this point and would expect sheltered minutes from him early on. One of the big standouts to me, though, is John Leonard. He has the most valuable skill in hockey, shooting talent. His ability to find space in the slot doesn't require him to be paired with a playmaking center either, as he's able to attack the slot on his own with very good puck skills and is someone I trust to carry the puck through the neutral zone in transition. He's going to make an impact on the offense just simply because of his ability to snipe net from outside. Jake McGrew has good speed and his puck skills are coming along, albeit slowly. At this point, he seems more like a forechecking energy line player to me, more than one relied on to find the score sheet on a consistent basis. Coming back off major knee surgery, I think he should be eased in, despite what I'm sure is a burning desire to get back on the ice after almost 18 months off. There are a lot of other forwards that are listed on the San Jose Village, but I think those are the ones that we needed to cover that are going to be the most impactful for the Barracuda this season. So let's talk defense. Cece, tell me about the blue line.
Well, and before I do that, I definitely want to give a thanks to Kevin Lacey from the Teal Town, USA. I had a brain fart for a second there, but definitely thank you to Kevin Lacey and him talking to us a little bit about, which forwards were going to make a bigger impact as opposed to which weren't. So kudos to him for that.
Absolutely. Sure. Kudos to him.
Kudos to him. Ah!
Yeah.
Oh, did you take my dad card? Because I know I revoked it a few episodes ago.
I don't know. I gotta stop doing that. It's bad.
No, you don't.
Talk blue line.
Let's talk blue line. Defenseman for the San Jose Barracuda. Newly acquired Christian Jaros. He's a big physical defender who is very much a stay-at-home defensive defenseman. However, I won't be expecting much in the way of offense from him. Big surprise there, right? He's very content to make glass and outplays instead of finding teammates for controlled exits in transition, especially under pressure. This seems more like a processing speed problem than a skating one, as Jaros moves well for a guy his size. Regardless, paired with a better puck mover, Jaros should provide steady defense. The same can be said for Jacob Middleton, who's a good in-zone defender and skates well for a guy his size, but lacks offensive upside. He's a bit better in transition and has flashes of good playmaking vision, but despite a decent-looking offensive toolbox, he just never seems to put it together consistently. Frederick Claesson fits into this category as well. He's not as big or as physical as Jaros or Middleton, but he's a good defensive defenseman whose skating is pretty good. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the offensive vision to really contribute in that end. I do like his gap control a lot better than Jaros or Middleton, and he's good in transition defense and handles pucks under pressure well in starting transition out of his own zone. Ryan Merkley has elite hockey IQ and playmaking vision. His poise under pressure is downright impressive as well. He doesn't have speed that would excite Ricky Bobby, but it's good enough. His defensive game effort waxes and wanes, but his offensive abilities are his trademark. Around the draft, there was a lot of concern about his attitude, rumors that he was immature and he blamed others instead of taking responsibility. He played for 3 separate junior teams in his OHL career, which is highly unusual. Normally, you play for 1 and maybe 2. However, since that time, he's gotten nothing but positive commentary from coaches, so thankfully that appears to be a thing of the past. Brinson Pashnuk has okay puck skills and skating, but what really stands out to me is his shooting ability and hockey sense. He's an awesome power play quarterback, as he has good poise to go along with playmaking vision and a very good shot. That patience and hockey IQ also makes him a valuable asset in transition, as he rarely makes glass and out plays, instead finding teammates to create controlled exits and entries. Nick DeSimone came back to earth last season after shooting at a 9% clip in 18-19. Don't get me wrong, he has legit skills, but I think his offensive production from 18-19 was sustainable. He has good skating and puck skills to pair with decent hockey IQ that's more subtle than flashy. His defensive game is just okay, and I'd say he finds middle pair production this season. Jacob Megna is a towering presence on the ice. His physical and imposing in the corners, he is physical and imposing in the corners, but does so in a smart way and doesn't rack up penalty minutes. He's a good in-zone defender, but his skating limits his ability to defend the neutral zone in transition. He has good hockey IQ and makes smart plays in the offensive zone, like attacking the middle and coming off the blue line to provide backdoor opportunities. Megna's shot mechanics are inconsistent, though, causing him to not have a powerful shot, which explains why he doesn't score goals more often. I expect him to be glued to Ryan Merkley, as 1, Merkley's a righty to Megna's lefty, and 2, Merkley is San Jose's unquestioned number 1 prospect who had some character issues in the past, so stapling a veteran leader to him is a smart idea. Number 3, Merkley's offensive prowess isn't a question, but his defensive zone play is questionable. And that's what Megna does best, is play in-zone defense. Saying Nicholas Milosh had a down 1920 season is a bit of an understatement. Milosh earned 4.28 point shares and a second pair defenseman grade in 18-19 with the Colorado Eagles before Colorado shipped him over to San Jose so they could acquire Antoine Bibeau in net. Now, for Milosh, in 1920, he earned 0.26 point shares and had a replacement level grade. You go from second pair to replacement? Ouch. Ouch.
Not great, Bob.
Not great, Bob. While he was never the most offensive-minded defender, he still put up points on the score sheet. Still, when I watch his film, I still see some positives in raw skill. He skates well for his size, has decent puck skills and playmaking vision. The marks against him are his play under pressure and bad turnovers. His puck management needs to improve. However, I think he'll bounce back this year, but I could see him starting off playing limited minutes considering how much he dropped off in between those 2 seasons that I mentioned earlier. All right, so there's your defenseman. We got forwards, you got defensemen. Who else are we forgetting? Maybe those resident voodoo practitioners, the goaltenders?
Yeah, there's only 3 of them, too, which compared to the rest of the roster, I was expecting to see like 7 guys here, but I'm pleasantly surprised that we only got really 3 to talk about.
Sure.
Alexei Melnichuk has the athleticism of an NHL goalie to go along with solid technical structure, but he struggles with his angles and tracking at times. Still, I think he has the potential to be a pretty good starter. Joseph Korenosh, I got it right, has high-end athleticism that Barracuda fans will remember from the handful of highlight reel saves he's made in his time there. However, his getting set on his angles has been a struggle at times for him, as he's gotten burned by just giving opponents too much net to shoot at. His rebound control is also not great, Bob. Zach Sawchenko could be the best goalie in camp, but he lacks the top-end athleticism the other 2 have. His angles aren't great, but his reaction time has bailed him out on more than one occasion. Because of how developmentally focused this season is, though, I think Melnichuk and Korenosh get the bulk of the work because you can teach technique and process. Athleticism is much harder to improve on and comes with some physical limitations. Every goalie coach on the planet would rather have an elite athlete in net to mold than a guy with superb technique and reads paired with a dad bod. That's the tact I think the Sharks take with their own goalie rotation this year is let's work with the high-end athletes and try and get them some technique, some process, some structure, some better reads than trying to improve Sawchenko from what he is. But we've covered the roster as best we can, the clown car that it is. Let's talk about outcomes. Cece, what's the best case scenario?
Well, the best case scenario is that the forward group by committee approach ensures that there is depth scoring throughout the season, and Merkley blossoms into the NHL caliber prospect he was always heralded as. John Leonard scores 15 goals, and the penalty kill is much improved thanks to guys like Zach Gallant. They finish with 51 points, which is an 85-point pace and usually good enough for a 1 or a 2 seed in the Pacific Division. So that's the best case scenario. Let's talk worst case scenario. Sean.
Playing the role of Debbie Downer here will be me. The team never gels as the lineups are switched around early and often. Merkley takes a step forward, but doesn't truly shine. Koronash and Melnichuk, they make some highlight reels, but are inconsistent and ultimately struggle more than they shine. In the worst case scenario here, I think they finish with 44 points. That's a 73-point pace and usually just outside playoff contention most seasons in the Pacific. So that's best and worst. What's most likely to happen here, Cece?
Well, most likely, I think it's closer to worst case than best case. I mean, San Jose didn't, obviously, like I mentioned in the stats capsule earlier, San Jose didn't have a good year last season. And so I think that carries over a little bit, especially since a lot of the forwards that, produced on the score sheet last year, I can't remember if a lot of the guys were on the taxi squad or not, but 7 of the top 8 scoring forwards from San Jose are coming back next year. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's, that they didn't have a whole lot of free agent acquisitions or anything like that, but I won't go on too long and be a blowhard. The model projects them for 47 points, which is a 78-point pace, and is normally good enough for a 4th spot in the Pacific Division. I think that's probably right. Maybe slight over to 48 for an 80-point pace. But yeah, so they'll improve from last year, if not just because of their deep forward core and, some prospects that have come on board, some younger guys. But other than that, yeah, that sounds about right as, slide over to 48 for an 80-point pace.
Yeah. And I think too, that they're not a bad team, but the Pacific is surprisingly going to be very competitive this year. I mean, even just the little bit of games we've seen from San Diego, they look loaded. I love Ontario's, Black and Silver Bandits. The only, they're kind of in the battle for the middle in that division, in my estimation. So the fact that the model kind of lines up with where we look at them and see, they're a good team, but they're not a great team. But that's all. That's about it for. Do you have any closing thoughts there on the CUDA, CC?
Oh, just saying they're just kind of meh. Just middle of the road meh.
Yeah, I would say that's a good description of it. So that's all we got for San Jose. Let's pay some bills here, and we will be back to talk Tucson Roadrunners.
All right, and we are back. San Jose Barracuda has been covered, and now we're going to talk about the Tucson Roadrunners. Here's a stats capsule for them. They have the newest head coach in the AHL in Steve Potvin. He was promoted on January 22nd to head coach. Imagine that. Another assistant promoted to head coach, Sean, in this economy?
It's amazing. They looked far and wide for a new head coach when Jay Verity got promoted. And my God, the call was coming from inside the house. They had the guy that was the best candidate right on staff already. Amazing how that works.
How did that even happen? That's crazy. Yeah. So Steve Potvin taking over the reins as the bench boss for Tucson. If you're paying attention to the Pacific last year, 19-20 regular season record, Tucson was up there. 36-19, 1-2. That was good for first in the Pacific Division. Their affiliation for 2021, they've got NHL, they've got ECHL, the Arizona Coyotes, of course, and the Rapid City Rush, one of 13, now 14 ECHL teams playing in the 2020-21 season. game scheduled. I I was frantically trying to look at the schedule and see, with all the cancellations. I know that San Jose and Tucson had canceled a few games, and with Stockton bowing out and everything like that. I believe they still have 40 games scheduled, and I don't know an exact number for opponents. So we'll go Colorado, Henderson, Ontario, San Diego, San Jose, and Texas. So those are the opponents. It's pretty evenly spread out. They're playing anywhere from 6 to 8 games, it looks like, for each of those opponents. So again, on the higher end of things, as is the case with most Pacific Division teams this year, 40 games for the Tucson Roadrunners. 5 of 6 are Pacific Division, and then you got Texas coming in from the Central to play a few games as well. So there you have it. We're going to talk a little bit about the forwards. So take it away, Sean.
So in direct contrast to the Barracuda, this is not a club with a lot of young guys on the roster at the AHL level. 2 players on the roster under 21. None are going to be leaving if a CHL season happens. So let's talk about the guys that are there. Michael Bunting is the fine wine of this roster as he continues to get better with age. And it's also a little bit of the Brad Marchand of the Tucson Roadrunners. In 5 seasons with the club, he's improved his point total pretty much every year, including his rookie campaign with the Springfield Falcons in 15-16. His work ethic drives his production more than a high-end toolbox. Still, he's got good puck skills and skating, and is best known for being a pest to opposing teams, a la Marchand. He finished 12th in the AHL for scoring last year and uses his stronger lower body to win puck battles along the boards. Braden Burke is another short-statured skater, but unlike Bunting, Burke has the high-end speed, hockey IQ, and a solid shot. I'm amazed he didn't make the Yotes out of camp, but if the Yotes had any sense, which is questionable for sure, they'll give him a shot in the show sooner rather than later. Jan Jenik has truckloads of creativity and a great hockey IQ. His puck skills and compete also make him one to watch for the Roadrunners in 2021. His skating was a concern prior to the big knee injury that he suffered, so I'm interested to see how he's recovered from surgery. He also might need to put a little muscle on, as 6'1", 161-pound frame guys don't really tend to stick at the AHL level being that tall and that skinny. Still, he's only 20, so he's got time to fill out, but he's someone who should get stapled to the peanut butter and jelly aisle in the grocery store. Lane Pedersen, another solid contributor with a cannon for a shot. Pedersen surprisingly went undrafted, but is a solid point getter when healthy. A lower body injury limited him to just 27 games in 1920, but still, he's an AHL All-Star selection in the past year and wasn't able to attend, and kind of like a Jordan meme, he took that personally. I think he's going to continue to do well. He's going to try and push to the NHL level. His defensive game is still a work in progress, and if he wants time in the show, I think a better 200-foot game would help get him there. Michael Carconi has good skating and a decent shot with a nose for the net, but struggles with consistency and gets tunnel vision at times. He's always been a good depth scorer and usually in bunches. In the short season, I like his chances to make an impact. Like Carconi, Kevin Waugh has been a consistent depth scorer over 183 AHL games. Waugh recovered well from a knee injury that cost him most of 18-19. That injury worried me as his best weapon was his speed, but he put in 14 goals and 35 points in 1920 and looked all right doing it, using not just his speed, but good playmaking vision. Tyler Steenbergen is an excellent skater with a good shot, but doesn't possess the puck skills or hockey IQ to drive play on his own. He's not terribly reliable on his own end and should be avoided on the penalty kill, but I think he has enough talent to be interesting depending on how well he fits with line mates. But a middle six role should be within reach for him. Ryan McGregor is an interesting player to keep an eye on, but he needs to be stapled to the S&C coach as well. If there's room for him after Jan Jenik is already attached to him. Because Ryan McGregor is 168 pounds and is 6 foot tall. That is not good. Regardless, he's good in his own ends. I don't think a lot of his offense transfers from his junior career, as he lacks the polished puck skills or top end speed, but I think he could be a valuable penalty killer or a shutdown line kind of guy. And of course, we have to end with Nathan Soucis as my alumni association card forbids me from excluding him. Given a pretty good logjam ahead of him on the depth chart, I don't know if he'll be given the ice time to get on the score sheet often, but he's someone who can be a good offensive threat in a bottom six role. He was one of the top playmakers in the NCAA for Penn State. He's got a small frame, but he skates very well. Overall, I think this is a much more veteran group than most teams around the league have, especially in the Pacific Division, where you see a big influx of kids on like San Diego, Ontario, but they have good top depth here in Tucson. And they have a good top line AHL scores, and a good blend of skills. You see guys who can shoot, who can make plays, guys who are good skaters, who are physical. It's a very good top to bottom group. So Cece, that's the forwards. Let's talk D.
Yeah, the D core is another story. They've got good defenders, but only one seems to really have an offensive upside, and that's Victor Soderstrom. Now, despite being young, Soderstrom should fit right in with the pace and physicality of the AHL. But that's the advantage to playing in the, Swedish Hockey League over the, CHL as an 18-year-old. You play against grown-ass men at a pro pace. Soderstrom has great puck skills and good poise. He doesn't fold under pressure and go glassing out when he doesn't have to. He doesn't have the speed to turn the corner on the rush, but he's able to play with pace. He defends well, but that's mostly due to his hockey IQ, as he's not a physical defender. Dyson Mayo, however, is a more physical defender than Soderstrom, but doesn't offer much offense in return, as his puck skills lack polish and his skating is just okay. Do I sense a top pairing line maybe in the future? We'll see, or at least a pairing. He's good in his own end, though, and he's seen as a leader on the team. Cam Dineen may not be a fan favorite, but he's got to be a coach's favorite. He's great at starting transition from his own end and finds teammates under pressure to create controlled zone exits. He defends his own blue line in transition well and rarely makes mistakes in his own zone. Offensively, I think there's a bigger toolbox there than what shows up on the score sheet, but he does struggle to put it all together offensively. Because of that, I think he stays in the middle pairings. Cam Crotty is a good skater, especially for a guy his size. His skating allows him to step up in the neutral zone and kill rush chances before they happen. His offensive game is still very much a work in progress, as he's not the best puck mover or playmaker, but he has value as a penalty killer and a transition defender as well in the bottom four. I am definitely rooting for Jalen Schmerich. Off the ice, he's a great ambassador for the game of hockey. On the ice, Schmerich's hockey IQ is what separates him. He's an okay skater with good but not great puck skills, but he makes smart plays and isn't afraid to jump in and join the rush. Well, so there's your D-core. Sean already tackled the forwards group. Let's talk net mining. Let's talk goaltending. Sean.
Ivan Presvadov. Oh. Ivan Presvadov has the size and athleticism you'd want to see from an NHL goalie prospect. His puck tracking has come along nicely as well, but his reliance on his athleticism is still an issue, as he'll be over-aggressive and commit and then get burned when he can't recover in time. There's also a very fun story. If you YouTube Ivan Presvadov and moped, you should find a fun story about an interesting story with him and a moped that I won't share here, but I'll let him tell it. Connor Lakubi moves okay, but doesn't possess top-end athleticism. He's done okay in the past in limited appearances in the net at the AHL level, and has consistently been above average in the coast over a decent sample size. I think he ends up as more of a true backup than a 1A, 1B starter to Prosvetov. But that's it for goaltending. Let's talk outcomes here. I'll go ahead and take best case scenario. Best case scenario is Soderstrom leads the blue line and the offensive depth keeps the goals flowing all season. While the goaltending is inconsistent and there are quite a few track meet style games, the Roadrunners have enough quality skaters to compete. They finish with 50 points. That's an 81-point pace in a normal season, usually good enough for a third seed in the Pacific. That's best case. CC, tell me worst case.
Oh, worst case. The goaltending looks bad, and the defense looks slow. Offensively, they do fine, but their transition games suffer from a lack of good puck movers on the back end. Burke and Yannick spend extended time away with the Yotes to make matters worse, and they finish with 42 points, which is a 68-point pace. Yee. All right. Most likely scenario?
Most likely, the model has them projected for 47 points, which is a 76-point pace. It's usually good enough to sneak into the playoffs into the Pacific, which is where I think the likely trajectory of this team is going. I think they're somewhere in that middle group with San Jose, somewhere between 3rd and 5th is the best team in the division. Depending on how call-ups in the CHL shake out with not only them, but the other teams that they play against, I could see them overperforming that 47-point line, but I think 47 points is the most likely mark. That's, again, a 76-point pace during a normal season.
Well, real quick. So now that we've wrapped up Tucson, we've wrapped up San Jose, we've wrapped up all the Pacific Division teams, minus Stockton because they're not there this year. Yeah. They're not. But with all that said, Sean, I want to pick your brain a little bit to conclude our previews for the time being before we again get to the Canadian division. Do you think the Pacific Division is the most competitive out of the 5 divisions this season?
Most competitive, probably. I think the difference for me, though, is most competitive comes at like I think that they are the most top heavy. They have the most talent. But I think that I think the Central has a much more balanced spread. Like Chicago's clearly the best team in that division, I think. But sure. I also think that there's a good chance that like the middle of that division is better. Like I don't think Texas is I think Texas is the worst team in that division, but I don't think Texas is as bad as what I think Henderson is going to be. Sorry, Henderson. I do want to say, just because I brought up Henderson, there are 2 takes for those Henderson helmets. Those helmets are amazing, and then being wrong. We will not have slander of those helmets on this podcast. But I
will interject. Go ahead. Never mind.
No,
go ahead.
If you're going to interject about Henderson helmets, then I'm going to just keep moving on. But
no. I wanted to interject about the jerseys.
Okay.
Real quick. The gold that they have for the numbers is really difficult to see. I don't know if you caught the game, but it's rough. And that's like the general consensus on social media. It's like, you guys need to change those numbers yesterday because it looks cool in theory, but good golly, does it not translate well over to AHL TV?
I'll agree with you. And I think like I like the numbers, but I also think like they could tweak them a little bit, still keep the gold, but find like a border or something that makes them a little more easy to see. But yeah, I'll give you that. I did watch parts of that yesterday, and probably going to do that one for our recap coming up later. But yeah, I did see that as kind of being a little hard to read. But I also think too, when we talk going back to the competitiveness of the division, I could see the North or the cheesesteak and wine division, as we're calling it, with Utica, Syracuse, and Hershey, Lehigh Valley, and Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and that division. I think because of the way it's structured, because Utica and Syracuse basically are going to eat each other and not really kind of involve themselves with the Pennsylvania teams too much, I think that changes the balance, because I think Utica and Syracuse are both really good, and the other teams in that division kind of aren't, but they aren't going to play each other. So it's going to look competitive on paper. So most competitive is kind of a difficult one to quantify or to think about for me. I think the Pacific is very easily the most talented division. Like if you took an all-star team from each division, I think the Pacific cleans house. But
gotcha.
I think competitiveness is a little harder to measure, because I think the bottom of the division isn't quite as good as the bottom of some of the others. And I think the North has kind of like a faux competitiveness to it because of the way it's structured.
Yeah, that definitely was a loaded question, and I'm sorry. I didn't clarify.
It's good. We got to talk. We got to talk about some kind of nuances that the schedule and the season builds in. And again, like it's so early in the season. Like we have no idea how call-ups, a CHL season, injuries, COVID, game cancellations, all of that is going to or what team, Troy Grosnick ends the season on.
Yeah, he might go back and forth between, Ontario and Bakersfield a couple times. Who knows? But
Ontario, Bakersfield, I'm sure he's going to get claimed by Carolina. Like it's,
he could jump on San Jose like he did a few seasons ago, and take him into a deep playoff run should that happen.
I feel so bad for him.
Oh,
All right.
Me too. Did you see his tweet real quick before we end this? He's
didn't.
like, he said, "Hey, I love the drive so much. I wanted to see how it looked on the other side of the road."
Good for him for taking a lighthearted approach to it, because I'm sure it's got to be. That's got to be brutal. Like,
oh yeah,
especially those teams, like the team that just claimed you, they wanted to keep you, but they're like, we got to do something. That's such a stupid mechanism by the NHL. But whatever.
I know it was silly this year, but we digress. Sean, take us home, brother man.
All right, that's it for the show. If you guys are enjoying the show, please make sure to subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, please rate and review the podcast wherever you're able to. If you're listening to it from Apple Podcasts, or if you're watching us on YouTube, like the video and comment what you thought of the episode. Doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media, at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at the Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found in our link tree, which is scrolling around the bottom of our YouTube video here. But for those on the audio version, it is linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. CC, tell me about yourself.
Well, hey, my name is CC Hockley, and you can find the Calder Farmstead on the Full Press Radio Network. You can also find a lot of other good hockey podcasts on there as well. We've got pretty much all sports covered and professional wrestling. So check out all of the podcasts that the Full Press Radio Network have to offer at www.fullpresscoverage.com. As for me, my Twitter account, I cover Full Press Hockey on the AHL side of things at FPC_AHL, and my personal Twitter account, music, commenting on other sports and things like that, but mainly hockey. Check out my personal Twitter account at CCHawk. That's SEESEEHAWK. And check out my writing on Full Press Coverage at www.fullpresshockey.com. We've got our nice own little hockey site in the Full Press Coverage Network. So check that out. Sean.
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SEANOBRIEN 81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien _81. Both of those, like CC, those are personal accounts for me. They're like 80% hockey content, some music, pop culture, societal takes in there in between, but mostly hockey. You can find my stats work on Tableau. That's where all of our point shares models, all of that fancy data stuff that we talk about, that is on my Tableau. You can find that at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction, DYSFUNCTION, so he can make music for you too.
And that'll do it for episode number 10 of the Calder Farmstead. And by God, Sean, we did it. We got through the 23 of the 28 teams that are currently active and playing and scheduled and ready to go. And we're just going to keep on trucking. The plan is we're going to be doing a weekend recap and review on Tuesdays, and we'll release that on Tuesday rather. And then we're going to have sort of a weekend preview on Thursdays. So stay tuned. We're going to keep producing content and keep talking AHL all season long. And that's it for the season previews for the time being. Again, for Sean O'Brien, I'm CC Hockley. Thanks for tuning in, and keep your stick on the ice.